enzymes are coming in from the pancreas and from the liver, and how most of our absorbed nutrients are absorbed. They all should be halfway down the gastro, or the small intestine, and then past the last part, really, it's just processing its way through until it comes through, and there's a little valve at the end of the small intestine called the ileocecal valve, and again, it's a double-layered valve. And this double-layered
Recording in progress.
we don't want anything from the large intestine or the colon going back into the small intestine. What comes out of the small intestine is liquid. So one of the main functions of the colon is to take water out so stools are formed. But notice there's something else happening in this area, and that's the appendix. And the appendix is not a mistake. God never makes mistakes. The appendix is a very important organ. The lady said to me that she had her right cyst, right ovary taken out because it had a cyst on it. And when she woke up, the doctor said, "Oh, and I took your appendix while I was there too." Yeah, can't put that one back. So what does the appendix do? It has two main functions. One is that it's called the oil can of the colon. So it lubricates the contents of the colon as it moves through. And the second one is it releases antibacterial fluid. So that if what's coming out of the small intestine is toxic, the antibacterial fluid basically calms it down as it does its life travel through the colon, through the large intestine and out. So what would cause what's coming out of the small intestine to be toxic? Well, I mentioned earlier that dogs can get away with meat because their gastrointestinal tract is 1 yard long and their hydrochloric acid is very, very strong. And remember, it's that hydrochloric acid that plays an important role in breaking protein down. Whereas us humans, our gastrointestinal tract is 10 yards long. And our hydrochloric acid is not as strong. And as I showed you earlier, you can strengthen it. You definitely can strengthen it. And I heard a lady mentioning that my daughter, her website, Misty Mountain USA, she does sell digestive tea already made up, so you can order it from her. So that is one way to boost it. Another way is the juice of a lemon just before the meal, and another way is a little canned pepper. That'll won't anything up. So you can boost your hydrochloric acid. The problem is many people are not eating well, they're eating all through the day, they're thinking of their meals, they're eating the largest meal at the end of the day, and so it's not getting broken down properly, and it starts to putrefy. You see, when vegetables break down, they ferment, but when meat breaks down, it putrefies, and the fumes from the putrefaction process are toxic. Just, have you ever, it's like my daughter's dog that bought the leg from the dead cow in, it's not a pleasant smell. So let's say on top of that, the person is having, say, a Coca-Cola with their meal, maybe they're having ice cream and chocolate flavouring at the end, you know, the high sugar, that just feeds that putrefaction process. So what's coming out of here is toxic. And so that appendix has to release that antibacterial fluid to just calm it down by the time it goes through. So one of the reasons why people get appendicitis is the poor appendix is just overworked. It's just overworked because what's coming through is quite toxic. And remember too that the digestive enzyme that we use to break down our food, they're predominantly made out of water. So if we're dehydrated, that's another contributing factor to not having enough of the stomach digestive enzymes. So most cases of appendicitis is just an overworked appendix. But also it can be because the colon's not moving as it should, Dr. Kellogg said 3 intakes of food a day should equal 3 evacuations a day. He said going once a day, if you're eating 3 times a day, that's constipation. Most people are surprised to hear that. See, when we eat food and the stomach starts to press together and help to massage it, that reverberates all the way down the gastrointestinal tract. So the most natural time to go is actually after every meal. And I know with my children, they were homeschooled, and after every lunch, there were no children in the house. They were all lined up. See, we lived out in Rainforest, we didn't have electricity, so we had what they call an outhouse, which is this huge chute dug in the ground, and then a little house put over that, and of course that's where you do your daily evacuation. And they were all lined up with the fruit trees, taking turns to do that outhouse. You see, many children, when they go to school, they're embarrassed to leave the classroom, or they're not allowed to leave the classroom, and so they don't go. They get into the habit of not going when they feel like going. And a very important rule with the colon is to promptly answer nature's immediate call. Got that? So when the body says go, you got to go. And aren't we so glad that right at the end of the colon there's a little muscle there called the puborectalis. The puborectalis is the muscle that holds up the last part of the colon. And we're so glad it's there because if the plane's about to land and you feel to go, aren't you glad you can hold it? Because you're not allowed to go. Or, there are just some times when we feel to go and we just can't. Maybe we're in a traffic jam. But what most people do is they use that process, which should be used just for an extreme situation. They use it every day. They use it every day. So maybe they're on the phone to a friend and they don't want to go because they want to finish the conversation. Or maybe they're watching a documentary and they don't want to go because they want to finish the documentary. Or they're writing an email and they don't want to go until they finish the email. Or they're digging in a garden and they don't want to go until they finish the garden, and they use that process to hold. And then they eventually finish what they're doing, sit, and if you notice they can't go. That's because the pressure you feel to go is when the contents from the colon fills up this area here. And if you don't go when you feel to go, it can't stay there because that puts huge pressure on the colon, on the anus, which would weaken it. And so what the body does is it puts it back into the last part. And then you sit to go and it's not there anymore. It's gone back here. And the longer it's in here, the more water gets taken out. And the more water that gets taken out, then we're left with rabbit pellets and cement. So it's important to go when the body says to go.
Barbara, before we move on, because you mentioned the appendix, if someone may be on the way to having their appendix burst.
If someone may be on their way to having the appendix burst, if it's swelling, the best way to stop the swelling is ice.
Nice.
Is ice.
On the, right there, okay.
It's right there, and that's right down at near your right hip bone.
Is there a supplement?
Just ice it. Because what ice does, ice stops inflammation. In fact, it's the best anti-inflammatory we have is ice. If you put the ice on and it hurts, do 7 seconds on, 7 seconds off, 7 seconds on, 7 seconds off. So you just keep applying it until the whole area is numb.
Okay.
And when it's numb, you know that it's calmed down that. And often it's a pressure in the colon, so with appendicitis, ice packs, and also an enema. An enema is, you can buy an enema kit from the pharmacist, and you just put a tube in and you put water in. Okay. What that does is the water comes in, then you sit down on the throne and it all comes out, and it just lightens the pressure because you've taken excess out.
And is there a supplement to help clean out any toxins or anything?
Yes, we'll go through that as we go as we discuss the colon.
What if he had an appendicitis, appendectomy of the
Sorry, so that.
What if my appendix was taken out as a teenager?
What if your appendix is taken out as a teenager? Well, there's nothing you can do about that. It's gone. But often when people have had appendixes taken out, they can be a little bit more prone to constipation. So you have to have your eye on that. So I'd like to, and I think we've done this, so we can take that away because we're down now in the last part of the colon, and there are some basic conditions that the colon requires to function properly. And I'm going to go through this a few times. It's basically the laws of health. And these laws of health can be applied to every part, and we're looking specifically sunshine. Did you know that lying outside and allowing the sunshine to hit your abdomen, it goes very, very deep. Use of water. Our colon needs us to be using adequate water. Use of water implies a few things, and we're going to look at one of those things in a minute. But use of water meaning we need to be having at least 8 glasses of water a day. So that's 8 plus. 8 glasses of water a day. In a very hot day when you're maybe working out in the garden and perspiring more, or maybe, I know yesterday when I was standing out the front warming up, it's not quite as cold today in Europe, but guys were coming out, there must be a gym here, and their shirts were wet, which means they've been working out big time, perspiring big time. You do something like that, you need more than 8 glasses of water a day because you're perspiring so much. There's a time to drink water and there's a time not to drink water, and we know the time not to drink water is when you're eating. Again, if you're thirsty, have a mouthful, that's not going to make a big difference, but ideally you stop half an hour before the meal and you resume about an hour and a half to 2 hours after the meal. So there's a time to use water and there's a time not to. Sleep. Our gastrointestinal tract needs to sleep. And when you eat the largest meal at the end of the day, it's not allowed to sleep. And you might find, and many people find this, that when they wake up in the morning within half an hour, it's time to go to the bathroom. Is that right? Mm-hmm. That's because when you're lying asleep, everything's still. Everything's going very slowly. But when you wake up, the whole body system starts to work. So it's a very natural time to feel to go. Trusting God, this takes into consideration all the emotional aspects of disease. When someone's stressed out, anxious, that affects the colon. And anyone who's been in war knows that it's not unusual for a young man in an extreme crisis that, they get diarrhea. How many brides on their night before their wedding have diarrhea? My teacher, because I'm a colonic irrigation therapist, and a 90-year-old lady taught me 25 years ago, and she used to say, tight mind, tight colon. Mm-hmm. So our emotions definitely affect our colon. Abstain, there are some things that must stop if you're looking for optimum performance from your gastrointestinal tract, especially we're looking at the colon. So what are the dehydrating agents? And when we're dehydrated, more water gets taken out of the colon than should be taken out of the colon. So yes, number one, we must be having those 8 glasses a day. And the earlier you start, the easier it is to get it all in, I have found. But caffeine is a major dehydrating agent. We had a microbiologist attend our program. He said, we did studies on caffeine. He said, we found that the body needs 5 cups of water to make up for the dehydrating agents in 1 cup of coffee.
Wow.
When you look at that, I think you'd have to come to the conclusion that most Americans are dehydrated. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Also, any toxin that comes into the body uses water in an attempt to dilute it so it's not so toxic to you. And so you apply sugar oil, caffeine, foods and drinks, alcohol. Drugs are very dehydrating because drugs aren't aliens to the body. So anyone that's on medication, they will need to drink more water because of the dehydrating effect of medication. Inhale. We need to be inhaling always in and out through nose. And if you're not used to that, I can promise you you'll get better at it. Now, one of the reasons why a lot of people become mouth breathers, and we'll look at this in detail when we look at the respiratory organs, is because they have an allergy to certain foods. And the most allergic, or the most common, I should say, the most common allergen foods are dairy. That's well known to cause excess mucus in the eustachian tubes. Wheat. The wheat was hybridised in the 1950s, and the hybridisation of the wheat created a protein or gluten structure that's very difficult for the gut to break down. Oats are very high in lectins, and they are often can have an inflammatory effect. Peanuts are commonly infected with mold, and refined sugar. Refined sugar just feeds any harmful pathogens in the body. So this is one of the causes for excess mucus in the eustachian tubes, which is why many become mouth breathers. Nutrition. We've looked at the importance of having high fibre, and now that we're in the colon, this is where that insoluble fibre is very, very important. So insoluble fibre, that's the fibre that can't be broken down, but that's very, very important for the proper running of our gut, because insoluble fibre stimulates peristalsis, which is movement all through the colon, but also insoluble fibre, it sweeps the corners of the gastrointestinal tract. So regarding nutrition, fibre is vital for the proper functioning of the colon. And in countries where colorectal cancer is high on the cancer list, and I know in the USA it is very high, it's in a nation that's not having enough fibre, so they're having all the refined carbohydrates and meat. There is no fibre in meat. They're usually dehydrated, having too many soda pops or teas and coffees, not exercising, so the colon's not getting daily exercise, so no wonder colorectal cancer is so big. So we looked at nutrition of fibre, the protein's essential, and good fats. We'll define that first lecture tomorrow morning. Moderation in all good things. We had a look at how overeating hurts the stomach. It actually hurts all the way down, because when the food's not getting properly digested, it's not getting properly broken down, then partially digested food's coming down to the colon, and then that creates other problems. So moderation in all the good things is a very important law of health. Exercise. The colon needs exercise. When you exercise, you increase the circulation of the blood to the colon, and when you exercise, you're causing movement of the colon, especially your Pilates type exercises. Did you do your push-ups this morning? Sorry, what's it?
On the wall.
On the wall, that's a good start. On the wall is good. Push-ups is great for your abdominal strength. And the guys that I mentioned to you who've conquered their pain and conquered their injuries, or managing their injuries with exercise, the most important exercise was core strengthening. Because all the muscles in our abdominal area are all connected to our spine. So when you strengthen core, you automatically strengthen spine. And when you do your core strengthening exercises, that's doing a wonderful massage every day to your internal organs there, of which your colon plays a large part. So those sustain me principles are vital for the proper functioning of your colon. So I'd like to look at a couple of things, and one is position. And we mentioned this yesterday when we looked at the colon as an organ of elimination, position. So let me show you what's happening. Here's the throne, and here the person is sitting on the throne. And when that person sits on the throne, this muscle here, called puborectalis, it remains taut, remains firm. The content still gets through, but if that person sitting on the throne puts a little stool before the throne, so that when they're sitting on the throne, they're mimicking the squatting position, that causes puborectalis to relax. And when puborectalis relax, the colon opens internally quite wide, and the contents of the colon passes much greater ease. Happy person sits on his throne with the stool before him. You can get little stools from dollar trees, things like that, or you can pay a little bit more money. It's still only about $30 to buy a squatty potty, which wraps around the toilet. So that plays an important role in ensuring that our colon is evacuated regularly every day. And what it also does, it takes away all pressure off the anus. And when there's pressure on the anus, that weakens the anus, which we do not want, and it also causes hemorrhoids to develop, which are an incredibly painful situation. So we can do much to prevent such problems. And it's not uncommon when someone is constipated that they decide to move things along a bit and force pressure in. And that all that does is put enormous pressure on the anus, and that's one of the causes for the hemorrhoids. So what can we do for constipation? Because you'll notice that the colon has a mind of its own. In fact, I've got a book at home and it's called The Second Brain, and it's all about the colon. And if you noticed, if you're going too much and you tell it to stop, it won't. And if you're not going enough and you tell it to go, it won't. No, it's got a mind of its own. So what the colon needs is gentle stimulation. So gentle stimulation by these simple laws, gentle stimulation by having fibre in your food, making sure that you're well hydrated, making sure you're exercising every day, stopping anything that would dehydrate. But I've met people that have said, I'm doing all that and I still can't go. So there are herbs, and I did mention this, I think it was yesterday, as we call it colon tea. And colon tea has a group of herbs in it that gently stimulate peristalsis. And this is the tea, I mentioned it yesterday when we were talking about detox, because this is the tea that we give our guests when they come to our retreat. And we give it to them specifically Sunday night, Monday night and Tuesday night. So Monday and Tuesday are the 2 fasting days. Some people need it, some people don't, some people need lots, some people need a little bit. We work very hard, and this is one of the hardest things, to teach people to listen. Listen to their bodies, observe. And one lady, it was about Thursday, she said, I haven't gone all week. I said, gone? I said, did you have the tea? She said, oh, it didn't work. And I said, well, you just needed more. I said, why didn't you ask for more? She said, no one gave it to me. So can you see, it's teaching people, if it's not working, then ask for more. Then if it's not working, ask for more. And I mentioned the lady, the psychologist, remember she had 3 cups a day to go. So the colon tea is one part Cascara Sagrada. And again, my daughter Emma in Self-Care by Design USA, she sells this already made up. 2-part licorice. Licorice is an emollient, so it coats and soothes the lining. The Cascara is pretty strong in stimulating movement, and then 3-part buckthorn. Buckthorn is a relative of the cascara, though it's not as bitter and it's not as strong. And so that ratio, that combination, we find to be very, very effective. And as I mentioned yesterday, this lady, this psychologist who went once a week, even then with help, she was taking 3 cups a day. Remember, after a few months, she had took less. After a few more months, a little bit less. After 4 months, she wasn't taking any tea and she was going every day. She was very excited about that. But she had to be diligent in implementing those sustaining principles and taking the tea regularly.
Hey, Barbara, isn't that buckthorn and not buckwheat?
Yes, it is. Thanks. I'm still mastering the art of writing one thing and saying another. It's buckthorn. Sorry about that.
That 1 cup of water?
Well, you mix all that. These are barks and that's root. And there's barks and roots that have to be gently simmered. So that's mixed in a jar. So there you've got a jar of that mix in that proportion. And then the rule of thumb is 1 teaspoon to 1 cup of water. And then that has a gentle simmer for 10 minutes. And then just see how much you need. Some people need 1 cup, some people need 2 cups, some people need half a cup. It all depends.
Can I ask one more question? On the exercise, does it matter what time of day you exercise?
Does it matter what time of day you exercise? Ideally in the morning, because you will reap the benefits all through the day. It's best to do it on an empty stomach because it'll take energy away from your stomach when you exercise. So ideally, early in the morning. Well, better to do it other times if there's no other time, but we find that early morning is the best. And I also find that if you don't do it early in the morning, you possibly won't do it. And I find the only way to do daily exercise is to make an appointment with yourself. If you don't make an appointment, you won't do it. But done in the morning, and then you can have a nice hot and cold shower, and you're ready for the day. What about irritable bowel? What about Crohn's disease, colitis, gastritis? These are all indications of irritation in the gastrointestinal tract. And whether it's colitis or Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis or irritable bowel, the same thing fixes them all. And we find that when someone's going 10 times a day to the toilet, that's severe irritation. And if someone's going that many times, remember the only thing that touches our gut is the food we eat. So changing the food makes a huge difference. And these foods here must stop. We find that these are incredibly irritating when there's irritation in the gastrointestinal tract. So those foods must stop. It can take at least 2 months to see a difference once those foods are ceased. If someone's going 10 times a day, probably the only food they can really eat is thick vegetable stews. So if there's that much irritation happening in the gastrointestinal tract, even raw food can be irritating to the gut. It's not forever. It's just until everything slows down. And slippery elm. Slippery elm not only coats, soothes and heals the lining of the gastrointestinal tract. Slippery elm also adds a little bit of form to the contents of the colon. For someone going 10 times a day, they could take that every 2 hours. And when everything starts slowing down, then they back off. Remember, you've got to listen, you've got to adapt and adjust, and you've got to watch. Now, when someone is severely inflamed, we add something else to the slippery elm. So we make a mix that's 8 parts slippery elm and myrrh. Myrrh is 1 part. And golden seal. Remember golden seal, king of tonics to all mucous membranes? 1 part. So these are all powders. Myrrh is a gum resin. If you buy it as little lumps, you can put it in your little coffee grinder and grind it up to a powder. Golden seal, you can usually use that as, or buy that as a powder. So for someone severely irritated, we find that this is a little bit more potent than just the slippery oil.
So then is it, you put it all together and it's 1 teaspoon to 8
That's
ounces?
right, 1 teaspoon to a cup of hot water. In fact, we call that gut repair. And my daughter Emma, she sells that too. You won't find gut repair in places like Trader Joe's because it's our little mix that we made ourselves. But I know that the retreats where I've worked at, which is Eden Valley in Denver, Colorado, and also Living Springs in Alabama, they also sell it because they run our program now. I know Living Springs doesn't have a health director at the moment, so I don't think they're running programs. But I know Eden Valley is.
Do you have to simmer it?
No, because they're powders, you just mix hot water into it. So they're powders, you mix a cup of hot water into it, it goes thick. If it's too thick, add more water. But usually 1 cup of water to 1 teaspoon of that, it doesn't go too thick.
Is it better to take it after or before meal?
Before the meal is best, and just before going to sleep at night. And then that allows it to work through the night. So we had a lady attend our program, and she was going 8 times a day. Little lady in her late 70s, and her daughter had put her on a raw diet. And wow, that was irritating. So we just put her on, she had the 2 days of juices, and those juices were very healing. Juices we talked about yesterday, and we gave her slippery on, and we gave that to her 4 times a day. So 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and then just before she went to bed. So within 36 hours, everything had slowed down. The pain had stopped, the bowel movements had slowed right down. So what's her body saying? Yes, yes, this is what I want. So you're watching for body's response. So I gave a lecture like this in New Zealand a few years ago now, and a lady came on Tuesday, she heard this lecture. And she said, I've had irritable bowel for 30 years. She was in her 70s. She'd never heard of these foods being irritating to the gut. And she said, that's my main diet. She said, that's what I'm predominantly eating. And she was a vegan. You know, I've met some very unhealthy vegans, have you? And they're eating predominantly carbohydrate. And so when I went to the conference a little while ago, it was all vegan, plant-based, and they had a dessert, and the dessert was a slice of carrot cake with this white fluff on top. And I don't like carrot cake. And I said, but what's that? And they said, oh, it's vegan, it's vegan. I said, I know cow's cream, and I know coconut cream, but what's that? And then they gave me this spray can of this cream. And did you know chemicals are vegan? I thought sugar's vegan. I said, no thanks. I'll just have the carrot cake. My body would not recognise that at all. At all. So since that experience, I don't call myself a vegan anymore, I'm plant-based. I can tell you right, there is not much plant in that spray can. So, yeah, this lady, she heard the lecture, she went home, she immediately changed her mind. So what she did, she got some, I think, organic soy milk, and I think for her cereal, she got buckwheat, and she stopped the wheat and the oats. She found some gluten-free bread. She started having almond butter. She had eliminated all the refined sugar, and she started just to take the Simply on. And I saw her 48 hours later, so that's Thursday night. She came up to me and she said, all my bleeding has stopped. She was bleeding from the colon, and she was on medication. She said, my bleeding stopped, my cramping has stopped. I am no more doing liquid bowel movements. And this is 30 years on medication this lady. You know what the next thing they would offer? Take the colon out? Yeah. She had tears in her eyes. She's like, I can't believe it. She said, in 48 hours, I've had more response than I've had for the last 30 years. See, what's the definition of insanity? To do what you've always done, expect different results. I'm not criticising that lady. She didn't know. And the experts she went to, they didn't know. If it's not working, don't do it. If it goes against your conscience, don't do it. Remember, I am the master of my destiny. I am the one that chooses what goes in my body and what doesn't go into my body. And your body's response, that's evidence-based. Now they talk about evidence-based, I'll tell you evidence-based. This lady's got evidence-based medicine. What's the evidence? What she's been doing doesn't work. What's her new evidence? What she's doing is working. She's not better. But she's on the road, is that right? She's on the road. She's on the right track. And I think that if I saw this lady a few months later, I think that I know what the response would be. She said this. This is good. My husband is a real black and white man. And he says if ever he gets sick, if ever he gets diarrhea or constipation, you don't know. He sits down and he looks at the last 24 hours. Okay? That's simple, isn't it? Because something has happened. Something has happened. Oh, it's constipated, I'm really underwater. Oh, it's got diarrhea, what happened? Ah, that's right, I had a Chinese takeaway. You know, those cheap Chinese takeaways, sometimes you don't know what's in it, is that right? So listen, my husband has no medical training at all, but you know he's got a lot of common sense. Yeah?
Can the slippery elm be okay in a capsule?
Can the slippery elm be okay in a capsule? It can. It's not as good. It's far better to have that thick drink and it immediately starts to coat and soothe. But you can apparently get slippery elm tablets and chew those up, but mixing it in with water is the very best. We also had a man that attended our program and he was mid-60s. I said, what's your reason for coming? He said, I'm here to support my wife. And so as I consulted with him, because you know, he was doing the program, I said, you want medication? He said, yeah, I'm on cortisone because I've got irritable bowel. He said, I'm 20 milligrams a day of cortisone. And he said, no, I'm anti-inflammatories. And he said, I recently went to the doctor and he said he could do no more for me. I said, oh. Tell me what you have for breakfast. For breakfast, I just have toast, peanut butter and jelly, you call it, or jam, and a cup of coffee with milk and sugar. Do you see what I'm taking on the pasta? Or what do you have for lunch? I have a ham and cheese sandwich with my wife's sugar biscuits and another cup of coffee. What do you have at night? I have steak and usually macaroni cheese, what's that probably? Yeah, there's the dairy, there's the wheat, and I like ice cream and chocolate flavouring, there we are, all the sugar, and I love to have a Jack Daniels after night. See, this man didn't know that everything he was eating was contributing to his problem. And as one young man said, who loved McDonald's, he said, but my mates eat McDonald's and they don't have irritable bowel. Do you see the reasoning? But if you've got irritation in there and you eat that food, oof, it will just feed. So this man, I said, can I try a few things? He said, oh, be my guest, I'm here. So we gave him Ciprion 4 times a day. It was just Ciprion. He didn't have the others in it. It was just Ciprion. Now, he told me that he exercises every day. He goes on a walk, and he lives in Hawkesbury, which is the coastal town where I'm the closest town where there's an airport. It's now in half from us. And he said, I've got this route. And he said, I walk for half an hour, and there are 4 toilets on the route, and I have to visit every single one of them. So in the first half hour of the day, he goes 4 times. He said, I know exactly where they are, because I'm going to visit them. Now this is on anti-inflammatories and cortisone. Within 36 hours, he came to me and he said, you know, it's quite remarkable, I'm not bleeding from the colon anymore. He said, it's quite remarkable, I'm not cramping anymore. And he said, everything's slowed down. He said, this is quite remarkable. Because he said, my doctor said he could do no more for me. So after 48 hours, instead of going 6 times a day, he's only going 4 times, 2 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and it's got form. I said, I can't tell you what to do with your medication, but I can tell you what I would do. I would stop your anti-inflammatory medication, because the fact that you're not bleeding, the fact that you're not cramping, the fact that everything's slowed down, that tells me inflammation has slowed down. What did him really well was 2 days on just juice. Just that carrot, celery and apple juice, that's very healing for the gut. And he was having a cereal. So I'm watching him carefully, and I said to him over the next few hours, any inflammation, any more diarrhea, it's stopping your anti-inflammatory? He said no. He said no reaction. Now if there had been a reaction, what would he do? Well, he's got a choice. He can go back on half medication, or he can just double the Ciprion. Because now just double the Ciprion. See, you adjust accordingly. That's why you have to listen. You have to listen, you have to watch. So by the end of the week, this man is a very happy man. No more pain, no more bleeding. His stools have actually got form. And on the last day, he came running up to me and said, I've just gone on a 1 hour walk and I have gone. So I'm so excited. Now, do you remember this man? He came to our retreat, and what was my question? Why are you here? I'm just here to support my wife. And yet he found him. He's not here. But what's his body just said to him? I like this. He said, what do you reckon I should do with the cortisone? I said, well, this is what I do. I said, every 2 weeks, I drop down 5 milligrams. So it was on 20. I said, because everything's settled, you could probably now go to 15. Give it a couple of weeks and you know, do everything that you should, and it's quite possible that every 2 weeks you can drop it down. If when he's down to 10 milligrams and he goes to 5 and he gets a little irritation, what do? You go back on the 10 and wait another 2 weeks and then drop it down a little bit more. Some people choose to do that, some people choose to work with their doctor, because the fact is, the doctor wants you better. And if you can prove to him that what you're doing, you're getting results, he'll very happily work with you. Some doctors want to know what you're doing. Some doctors just say, just keep doing what you're doing. So remember, you're your doctor. Because you're the one that lives in your body, you're the one that knows what works and what doesn't work. This man was so happy, he said, I think I can actually go back to work. He said, I stopped work because, you know, I couldn't go anywhere, because I had to have toilets nearby, because I didn't know where there was going to be a reaction. And I tell you these stories because each of these stories are in people who have, it's chronic. You know, they've had it for years, sometimes 20, 30 years, and yet how quickly did it turn around. You see, the cells of my gastrointestinal tract, they're remade every 3 to 5 days, remember that? And so really, there should be a result very quickly. If there's no result, you've got to look at why. Look at why, and keep adjusting, keep adjusting. If there's a flare-up, what's a flare-up? When someone's going 10 times a day. If there's a flare-up, just go to thick vegetable stews, or plate of steamed vegetables, and just increase the slippery on. As everything settles down, then you can start to expand a little bit. See, someone with irritable bowel, white rice is the best for them, because they want to be easy on the fibre. And yet, most of the time, of course, your whole rice is your whole grain rice that's your best. But you adjust according to what the colon tells you. It will speak to you. Your body will tell you what to do. Your body can tell you what no man can tell you. Now, here's another treatment, and this is not possible for every person. You probably have to be smaller in stature to do this, but they're called sitz baths. So sitz baths is German for sit. And so this is sitting in hot water and sitting in cold water. And this certainly, whether it be diarrhea, whether it be constipation, whatever the problem, the sitz baths cause an influx of blood to the area. When you get an influx of blood to the area, you're getting more nutrients, you're getting more water, you're getting more oxygen, it's taking the waste away, and you're getting more white blood cells. They've been done for centuries. And this is 3 minutes hot, and 30 seconds ice cold. And this is usually done 3 times. So the whole treatment only takes 15 minutes at the very most. And so what the person does is they want a tub that they can sit in, and the area that you're covering is this area here. So usually from your mid-thighs to your belly button, it's that whole area. And this is a powerful treatment for kidney problems, for reproductive problems, male and female, but we're specifically looking at it now for the colon. I've always wanted sitz baths, but my husband really thought they were that important. Until last year, when I was there, in November, we had a man come who had prostate cancer. He was lightly built, but his stomach was very swollen, and his legs were very swollen. And when I saw him, he could not drink, he could not eat. I thought, oh, this is advanced. What can we do? They can't eat or drink. So we had a bath, one of our treatment rooms. And this is what I said to the staff to do. In the bath, you just make sure that only your and your feet are in the bath. And they had another tub where they could do the cold. So that's the cold, and this was the hot. So that's how we did it. And what they did was they put blocks of ice in the cold. So it was it was hot, very nice. But it's only 30 seconds, maybe 30 seconds in the cold. And so that's what we did. We did that with him. And we did it in the morning and we did it in the afternoon. And I saw him, let's say they did this Sunday night, they did it twice Monday, and then on Tuesday, I saw him, legs were back to normal, stomach was back to normal, and he's able to have the juices. I had lunch with him on Wednesday, and he had seconds, he had 2 platefuls of food. It was unbelievable, the difference. What it had done is just brought more blood to the area, which actually just increased healing in the area. Now he's not better. I've got an incredible result. So immediately my husband contacted the Uber, And by the end of the week, we had sits baths built. In fact, everyone saw what an incredible effect that the sits baths had. It's just a simple treatment, but it takes a little while to set it up, of course, but what an incredible result. And I noticed now, because we've got a Misty Mountain WhatsApp, so I've always got my eye on what's happening at Misty Mountain. Wow, sometimes half the guests are on sits baths. Sits baths every morning. If it's serious, it can be twice a day, maybe just once a day. And I had an experience, and this happened about 18 years ago now, and this was when you were in Melbourne. We had a health retreat in Melbourne, and this retreat did have sits baths fitted in. And I got a call that this lady wanted to send her 15-year-old son. He had a problem, and that was that he had accidents in the classroom. Bowel fluid would come out in the classroom. Now, sometimes he had constipation. There was no leakage when he had constipation. And if he had diarrhea, he would have accidents. How incredibly embarrassing that is for a 15-year-old. But that also told me that we've got a problem with the anal sphincter, because if the anal sphincter is strong, it will hold it. And they said, yes, there is. He's already had 2 operations. Now, you don't want an operation on that area. And neither of them had worked. And the surgeon was hesitant to do another operation because that's more scar tissue. So I said, yes, I think we can help. So number one, eliminating the, he wasn't a good eater, he lived on a lot of junk food, so he had a little bit of irritable bowel. That's why he had sometimes diarrhea, sometimes constipation. So we gave him Ciprion, but we gave him sits baths twice a day, every morning and every night. There were no incidences while he's there. And by the way, can you imagine what that anal sphincter is doing when it's sitting in that ice cold water? And what happens is this has a stimulating effect on the blood supply. And what happens when you increase blood supply in that area, it wakes the nerves up. He went home a very happy young man, totally committed to eating right now. And also, because he's 15 and he's going to school, I did it twice a way a day while I was at the retreat, but I said just do it once a day. Because how are you going to do that before you catch the school bus to go to school? So I said just do it in the evening. But I said do it non-stop for 30 days, because every time he did it, he extended the power of the last one. So it's like the second one is almost twice as potent, the third one's almost 30 times as potent. See what's happening? See what's happening? So I said, every time you do it, you extend the potency. Do it 30 days non-stop. I didn't hear anything. Didn't hear anything again. Now this young man was 15, so 5 years later, his cousin came and did our program. She said, did you hear what happened in the bed? I said, we didn't hear a thing. She said, he's totally healed. Totally healed. Now, what would have happened if he hadn't come around a tree? Yeah. What? Can't do any more operations. No surgery is going to help. No medication is going to help.
Diapers.
So, diapers. When you're 15, there's a very happy young man. How simple is that? Just sitting and alternating hot and cold. That's hydrotherapy. It's been used for centuries. It's a very powerful treatment. So before we finish, which we're about to, we come right down to the very end. We're looking at hemorrhoids. And those sits baths, excellent for hemorrhoids. Now, if someone has very painful hemorrhoids, they might need to put up a blow-up ring pillow on the bottom of the bath, because it would be a bit uncomfortable to sit on the hard bath. So that can be added. And also changing the diet. Most women with hemorrhoids, you've got to make sure there's no constipation. There are some suppositories that you can make. So I'll give you the recipe for the suppository, and for the suppository that can be very soothing and very helpful with hemorrhoids, whether they be external or internal. You mix together 50% castor oil and 50% coconut oil. So you would melt the coconut oil so that you can mix them together. And you mix them together and you have disposable gloves. So here's the disposable glove, and you pour the liquid into the fingers and then you tie them off. And you have it in the fridge. And then it goes solid. And so you've created your suppository. So you just cut one off, peel the plastic off and insert that into the anus before you go to bed at night. And what will happen is, of course, the castor oil and the coconut oil will melt and the oil goes through to the hemorrhoids and eases them. So that's suppositories that you can use to heal the hemorrhoids. So to heal hemorrhoids, make sure you squat, have a little stool, sits baths if it's an option or a possibility, change the diet so that the bowels are regular. What can also help with constipation and irritable bowel is castor oil compresses on the abdomen. So that's another one that can be done. And we're going to be looking at that when we do natural remedies. I think natural remedies is strong. Tomorrow we're looking at fantastic fats in the first lecture, and then we're looking at cancer treatments, of how you can help the body to conquer cancer. Can't remember the third one. Diabetes awareness. Yep, so we've got some interesting subjects tomorrow. And are there any questions as we close? Yes.
Yeah. Does the sit stuff help with constipation?
The sits baths help with constipation. They help with any problem in the abdominal area. Yes.
Diverticulitis.
Diverticulitis. What a diverticulitis is it's little pockets like this. And what happens is that goes hard, and that can be very painful. So one of the best things with diverticulitis is a massive dietary change, eliminating the things I talked about. Using castor oil compresses on the abdomen can soften and ease, and also endless. When you put the water in, it softens them. It can even, the water can even clean out those little pockets, because medicine has no cure for diverticulitis. Yes?
Water in your mouth?
Pardon? Well, yeah, just warm water.
But it's bad for a leaky bladder.
For a sits bath help for a leaky bladder, absolutely. That alternating column, also rebounding. Now, if someone has a leaky bladder and they get on a rebound, they'll leak. So you just empty the bladder first, and then it strengthens that and you breathe through it smoothly. Yes?
How long are the 6 steps for treatment of adult sphincter?
Well, with this man, he did 30 in a row.
30 in a row. I have another question which relates to breast milk. How long does it take before or after the baby breastfeeding for the baby to have an allergic reaction? How to determine what the baby is allergic to?
Well, the most common allergens for a baby to breast milk are the 5 allergens I put up there: dairy, wheat, oats, peanuts, and refined sugar.
Thanks.
Yeah.
What if it's organic oats?
What if it's organic oats? If you've got an allergy, whether it's organic oats, gluten-free oats, it's the lectins. And whether it's organic or gluten-free, it's still got lectins in it. Some people handle oats quite fine. My 3 sons have oats for breakfast every single morning, and they love it. They have no health problems, so it's fine. But if someone has a health problem, especially if it involves inflammation, I would, are best left out until they heal. Once they heal, they can probably handle the others. Yes.
How do you deal with just the constant toxicity just in the air and the water? There's just stuff
The
that's-
constant toxicity in the air, I have found that this sustains me, it sustains me principles, and you just do the best you can. Because our body, as you saw yesterday, we have a liver, and that liver has the ability to detoxify us as long as you give it the right conditions. Yeah?
I have a friend with IBS, and I sent her your notes over lunch, and she's like, "I just finished a round of antibiotics." How long does that take to get out of the system? And she's missed that step, so is it avoiding the foods are the best next step? Is it the
Avoiding the foods and taking the slippery element of garlic pears, you can order that from Emma, aloe vera. You know, they can drink aloe vera through the day and as well as the slippery element, but the antibiotics will never heal it. And it might ease symptoms, but it causes more imbalance in the gut flora, unfortunately. So it's time to go. You've sat for a long time. Let me say a closing prayer before we leave. Father, thank you so much for what you've taught us. Thank you for our bodies. We know that you are our teacher and our guide, and we thank you again in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.